what if wealth and happiness weren't just lucky breaks?
Right, like some kind of genetic lottery or something.
Yeah, exactly. Because usually when we talk about being truly rich or, deeply peaceful, there's this underlying assumption that it all comes down to a roll of the dice.
Like you're either born into the right family or you stumble into the right opportunity at exactly the right time.
Right. Or you just naturally possess a brain that produces serotonin at the perfect rate.
Yeah, we tend to treat wealth like a lightning strike, and happiness like good weather.
We hope for it. We pray for it. But we don't really believe we can control it. But what if getting rich and becoming happy are actually tangible mechanical skills?
Skills that you can learn and practice, just like, I don't know, learning to play the piano or writing code.
Exactly. And that is the incredibly ambitious promise we are going to unpack today. Welcome to Readless, everyone.
Glad to be here for this one. It's a game changer.
Today, we are going to explore a deep dive into the audiobook summary of the Almanack of Naval Ravikant, which was written and compiled by Eric Jorgenson.
And this book has literally helped millions of readers around the world understand some very important lessons about wealth creation and internal peace.
It really has. So in this deep dive, we're going to break down the key ideas, the principles, and the lessons from the book in a simple, easy-to-understand way. By the end of this, you are going to have the foundational mental models to completely reshape how you value your time.
Yeah, and how you systematically build wealth and how you cultivate that deep internal peace.
For some context, if you don't know him, Naval Ravikant is a legendary investor in Silicon Valley. He put early money into companies like Uber and Twitter.
He's also the founder of AngelList. But, his financial resume isn't really why millions of people study his every word.
No, it's not. It's because he has this incredibly rare reputation for being uniquely, massively successful while also being genuinely, profoundly happy.
Which is a rare combo, let's be honest.
So rare. And Eric Jorgenson's curation here is essentially a public service. He spent months distilling a decade's worth of Naval's transcripts, tweets, essays, and interviews.
All into this single, cohesive philosophical framework. And our goal today is to take that dense material and distill it even further for you.
We're going to look at the absolute mechanics of building wealth, how you disconnect your time from your money.
And then we'll explore the internal psychological work required to achieve lasting happiness.
Right. And a quick note, because these concepts are so deeply tied to Naval's worldview, you'll hear us attributing these ideas directly back to the book and the author.
Yeah, we'll be constantly referencing what Naval teaches in the text because we're exploring his highly distinct philosophy.
So let's jump right in. Part 1 is all about the mechanics of wealth. And the book teaches us that we actually have to completely redefine the words we use every day.
Yeah, because according to the Almanac, most of us spend our entire lives chasing the wrong thing.
We really do. And it's because we don't understand the difference between money, wealth, and status.
If you don't define your target correctly, you'll spend your life running a marathon in the wrong direction.
Which sounds exhausting. So let's start with money. The author explains that money is not wealth.
Right. Money is simply the mechanism we use to transfer wealth. Naval defines it in the book as social credits.
Social credits. Like an IOU.
Exactly. It's a physical or digital IOU from society that basically says, you provided value in the past. Here is a token you can redeem for value in the future.
So money is just the router. It just moves the value around. But then there is status, which is where I think the vast majority of human energy actually goes.
Oh, absolutely. The book defines status as your place in the social hierarchy.
And the evolutionary psychology here is fascinating, right?
Yeah.
Because status is fundamentally a zero-sum game.
It is the oldest game in human history. To understand why it's zero-sum, Naval points out that you have to look at our evolutionary roots.
Like back to hunter-gatherer times.
Yeah, exactly. If we're in a tribe of 50 people, well, there can only be one chief. There can only be one second in command.
Right. So if you want to be number 2, you literally have to push whoever's currently number 2 down to number 3.
You have to put other people down to elevate yourself. It's a blood sport built into our DNA.
Which is exactly why someone will buy a luxury car they can't afford just to signal to their neighbor that they're doing better than them.
Yeah, it's purely a status play. But that leaves us with the ultimate goal, which is wealth.
And the definition provided in the book is beautifully simple, but incredibly difficult to execute. Wealth is having assets that earn while you sleep.
That is the engine of abundance. According to the author, wealth is the factory full of robotics cranking out widgets at 3 in the morning.
Or a computer program running on a server, serving thousands of customers while you're eating dinner.
Or even a media asset, like a book or an audiobook summary like this one that's continually monetizing regardless of your physical location.
So wealth is not about a high salary. It's about owning equity in systems that generate value independently of your direct labor.
Exactly. But I know this is where people get stuck.
I have to pause and push back on this because there is an immense amount of friction here for a lot of people listening.
Oh, for sure.
Because the underlying implication of this definition is that hard work isn't the secret to getting rich.
Right, which sounds crazy to most of us.
If I'm a roofer or I'm running a local restaurant and I am grinding 70, 80 hours a week, sweating, bleeding for my business, am I doing it wrong?
It feels like an attack on the working class, doesn't it?
It really does. Does Naval's philosophy invalidate the pure brute force effort of millions of people?
That is the exact psychological friction the book forces you to confront. But the answer isn't that hard work is worthless.
Okay, good.
Yeah, Naval is very explicit in the text that extreme hard work is an absolute prerequisite. You cannot skimp on the effort.
Okay.
But, and this is the painful truth, effort alone is not enough if it isn't directed through the proper channels.
Through leverage and ownership, right?
Yeah.
Because of the input to output ratio.
Precisely. Let's look at that restaurant owner working 80 hours a week. Their inputs are linearly tied to their outputs.
If they're not physically in the kitchen cooking, the value creation stops.
Right. Their upside is strictly capped by the physical hours in a day. So to transition from earning money to building wealth, you must completely disconnect your inputs from your outputs.
And the book teaches us that you do that by acquiring equity, which is ownership in a business, and by aggressively applying leverage.
Yes. Let's talk about leverage, because Jorgenson's curation breaks this down into 3 distinct forms.
And understanding these 3 forms is essentially the cheat code to modern capitalism.
It really is. The first and the oldest form is labor leverage, having other humans work for you.
Right? Labor leverage is literally how the pyramids were built.
And it's deeply ingrained in us to want this. We all want to tell our friends, oh, I manage 50 people, because it signals high status.
But Naval argues in the book that in the modern world, labor is actually the worst form of leverage you can pursue.
It's incredibly messy. Humans are complex, they're emotional, they're unpredictable.
It requires tremendous, exhausting leadership skills.
Yeah, the book notes that when you rely on labor leverage, you are perpetually one bad day away from a mutiny.
That sounds incredibly stressful.
Yeah.
So then we move to the 20th century model, the second form of leverage, which is capital, money.
This is the Warren Buffett model, basically. Using money to multiply the outcome of your decision-making.
Because if you're a brilliant stock picker, doing it with $1,000 yields a tiny return.
But doing it with $1 billion yields massive wealth. Capital scales infinitely better than managing human beings.
However, both labor and capital share a massive structural bottleneck.
Right. They are what Naval categorizes as permissioned leverage.
Permissioned, meaning somebody has to give it to you. You can't just decide to have $1 million to invest. Someone has to write you a check.
And you can't just decide to lead an army. People have to actually give you permission to lead them. The friction is external.
Which is exactly what makes the third form of leverage so revolutionary. The book teaches that this is the defining characteristic of the newly wealthy in the 21st century.
Yes, it is permissionless leverage. Specifically, code and media.
This is where the game completely changes. Code and media are products with absolutely zero marginal cost of replication.
Which is a fancy way of saying it doesn't cost anything to make a second copy.
Exactly. I like to visualize this as having a tireless robot army. If you write a piece of software or record an audio file, those are digital robots.
They don't need health insurance, they don't sleep, they don't unionize.
And they work for you for free in the dark while you were fast asleep.
You write the code once, and 1 million people can download it. You don't need anyone's permission to sit at a laptop and write.
You don't need a gatekeeper to hit publish on a video.
Yeah.
But the framework is clear that simply having access to permissionless leverage isn't quite enough.
No, it's not. You can't just write generic code or record a generic video and expect to build massive wealth.
You have to combine that leverage with what Naval calls specific knowledge.
Yeah, I really want to dissect specific knowledge because we aren't talking about going to a university and getting a standard degree in accounting or marketing, are we?
Not at all. Standard education is actually the opposite of specific knowledge. The rule of thumb here is kind of chilling.
What is it?
The book states that if society can train you to do a job, they can train someone else to replace you.
Wow. Yeah, and eventually they'll just program a piece of software to replace that person entirely.
Exactly. So specific knowledge is the esoteric, highly unique combination of traits, obsessions, and skills that you have cultivated since childhood.
It's almost like a fingerprint. You can't mass produce a fingerprint and you can't forge it.
Naval says that specific knowledge feels like play to you, but looks like work to everyone else.
Like the kid who naturally obsesses over dissecting electronics in their garage.
Or the person who effortlessly understands the psychology of negotiation just by reading the room. It's just who they are.
And the ultimate competitive advantage, as outlined in the Almanack, is to escape competition through authenticity.
Because if you're competing with someone else to be the best generic software engineer, it's just a race to the bottom on price.
Right. But no one can compete with you on being you. When you combine your highly authentic specific knowledge with permissionless leverage, you create a monopoly of one.
I love that. A monopoly of one. To really ground this, there is a brilliant progression laid out in the text regarding the real estate industry.
Oh, yes. This perfectly illustrates how an individual scales from zero leverage to infinite leverage.
Let's trace that evolution because it's so clear. You start at the very bottom of the ladder as a day laborer.
Imagine you're swinging a hammer on a construction site. You have zero leverage.
And your specific knowledge is very low because almost anyone able-bodied can be trained to swing a hammer.
Right. And your accountability is also low. You just report to the foreman. Because your inputs are perfectly tied to your physical outputs, you make an hourly wage.
Let's say $15 to $20 an hour. Your wealth creation is severely capped.
So, feeling the pain of that cap, you decide to move up the chain. You become the general contractor.
Now the math changes. You are organizing the build for the owner. You might pull $50,000 in profit from the project.
Why did your income jump exponentially? Because you added leverage in the form of labor. You now have a crew of workers swinging the hammers.
And you added specific knowledge. You know how to navigate complex city permits and manage supply chains.
Crucially, you added accountability, too. If the foundation cracks, your company's name is on the lawsuit. You took on risk.
But $50,000 a project still isn't true. Sleep at night, generation shifting wealth. So you step up again to become the real estate developer.
The developer operates on a completely different plane. They buy the raw land, hire the general contractor, take on immense financial risk, and eventually sell the finished complex.
Now the profit isn't $50,000, it's $1 million.
Because the developer is using massive capital leverage raising money from banks and investors.
They possess deep specific knowledge of macroeconomic trends, zoning laws, and finance. And their accountability is absolute.
Yet, even the developer is constrained by the physical reality of building one structure at a time.
Which brings us to the absolute peak of this progression, the tech real estate founder.
Right. This is the individual who looks at the entire industry and says, I understand real estate, but I also understand code.
So they build a platform like Zillow or Airbnb.
They combine labor leverage, massive capital leverage, and the infinite permissionless leverage of code.
Their specific knowledge is a rare intersection of tech, architecture, and real estate mechanics. Their accountability is global.
And their upside is completely decoupled from physical reality. They aren't making $1 million, they are making billions of dollars.
Because their software can execute 1 million transactions a second while they sleep. That progression makes the mechanics of wealth so undeniable.
It really does. But here is the catch.
There's always a catch.
If you're going to deploy massive leverage, you have to know exactly where to point it.
Because a highly leveraged worker can do catastrophic damage if they steer the ship in the wrong direction.
Exactly. If you have an army of robots moving at light speed, a 1-degree error in navigation puts you in the wrong galaxy.
Wow. Yeah, so that reality demands a total psychological shift. You have to move from valuing how hard you work to valuing the quality of your judgment.
This is a critical pivot in Naval's philosophy, and it brings us to part 2 of our deep dive, the mindset of judgment and valuing time.
We live in an age of infinite leverage. Because of that, a tiny, seemingly microscopic difference in judgment yields massively divergent results.
Think about a CEO steering a $100 billion company. If their judgment is just 5% better than the next available candidate.
That 5% difference is worth billions of dollars to the shareholders.
Exactly. That is why they are paid tens of millions of dollars. They're not being paid for their time. They are being paid entirely for the accuracy of their mind.
To get your judgment to that level of precision, the book teaches us that you have to ruthlessly protect your time to allow yourself space to think.
And Naval's specific tactic for this is aggressive. I actually love the arrogance of it.
It's so arrogant, but it works. The book details how, long before he had any real money, Naval set an aspirational, absurdly high hourly rate for himself.
$5,000 an hour.
It sounds deeply arrogant until you understand the utility of it. Setting an aspirational hourly rate isn't an ego trip. It's a ruthless decision-making heuristic.
But imagine the cognitive dissonance, though. You're maybe earning $30 an hour at your day job, but you go home and force your brain to operate as if your time is worth $5,000 an hour.
How does that practically work?
The author explains it works by forcing you to confront opportunity cost at a visceral level. Let's look at the example in the text. Naval orders a gadget, maybe a broken speaker, and it arrives in the mail, but it's defective.
The typical human response is to print a return label, find a box, drive to the post office, stand in line, and mail it back to get a $50 refund.
Right. And that process takes an hour. If you genuinely believe your time is worth $5,000 an hour, returning that speaker just cost you $5,000.
Ouch. Yeah, the math dictates that you should literally throw the broken speaker in the trash or give it away and go back to doing high-leverage thinking.
It's an aggressive filter to stop doing low-value work. If you can hire someone to mow your lawn, fix your plumbing, or run your errands for less than your aspirational rate, you must outsource it immediately.
Because if you value your time at zero, society will gladly pay you zero.
Such a powerful quote from the book.
But, and this is a big but, having all that free time is entirely useless if your judgment is flawed. You have to fill that time with clear thinking.
Which is why Jorgenson's curation spends a significant amount of time detailing Naval's preferred mental models.
These are the lenses through which he views reality to ensure his judgment is sharp. The first one is inversion.
Inversion is a concept popularized by mathematician Carl Jacobi and heavily utilized by investors like Charlie Munger.
The premise is counterintuitive. Instead of trying to figure out how to be right, you focus all your energy on figuring out how to avoid being wrong.
It's like looking at the problem through a mirror.
Exactly. If you want to build a successful startup, don't ask, what are the 10 things we must do to succeed? That list is infinite and unknowable.
Instead, ask, what are the 3 catastrophic mistakes that would absolutely destroy this company?
Maybe it's running out of cash, alienating the core user base, or fighting internally among founders. You then systematically build barriers to prevent those specific failures.
Inversion teaches us that long-term success is often just the mathematical byproduct of consistently avoiding fatal mistakes.
That makes so much sense. And that leads directly into another foundational model from the book, the principal-agent problem.
Oh, this is huge. Naval argues that if you don't understand this dynamic, you will walk through life completely blind to why things constantly go wrong around you.
It's a cornerstone of microeconomics. The principal is the owner. The agent is an employee, a contractor, or anyone working on behalf of the owner.
And the psychological mechanism here is rooted in evolutionary self-preservation. An agent's upside is almost always capped.
If a salesman sells 10 times more product, he might get a slightly larger bonus, but the principal gets to buy a new yacht.
Right. The agent's brain calculates that risk-to-reward ratio and correctly decides to optimize for their own comfort, not the principal's maximum gain.
It reminds me of the Julius Caesar quote Naval drops in the book. If you want it done, then go. And if not, then send.
The only way to get true obsessive dedication is to be the principal. If you are building a company, the secret is not to yell at your agents to work harder.
The secret is to tune your agents into principals by giving them equity. You have to align the biological incentives.
And when you are making decisions as a principal, you face difficult choices. That is where Naval applies the run-uphill heuristic.
The book states that if you are faced with 2 roughly equal choices, you must deliberately choose the path that is more difficult and painful in the short term.
Why intentionally seek out pain, though? That seems completely contrary to human nature.
Because human nature is exactly what we are trying to override. Our brains evolved in an environment where calories were scarce and physical danger was imminent.
So our neurobiology is hardwired to avoid short-term discomfort and seek immediate dopamine.
But in the modern world, The most valuable things in life, wealth, health, deep relationships, only come from compound interest. And compound interest always requires upfront sacrifice.
It's the classic gym analogy. Working out is physically painful right now. Sitting on the couch is deeply comforting right now.
But the long-term compound effect of the couch is decay, and the long-term compound effect of the gym is vitality.
Precisely. When you're agonizing over a decision, your brain is usually trying to trick you into taking the easy path. By adopting the run-uphill rule, you short-circuit that biological trap.
You lean into the pain because you recognize that short-term pain is the toll you pay for long-term compounding rewards.
Which connects to how you filter the endless opportunities modern life throws at you. Naval has a brutal heuristic for this in the Almanack, the no rule.
Oh, I love this one. If you cannot decide whether to say yes to something, the answer is definitively no.
We are not biologically evolved to handle the sheer volume of choices we have today.
Right. Our ancestors lived in tribes of maybe 150 people. Your options for a mate were limited to a few people. Your career options were hunter or gatherer.
Today, you have a globally connected dating pool, infinite career paths, and the ability to live anywhere on Earth.
Because the decisions of who you marry, what career you pursue, and where you live have such massive, lifelong compound effects, you simply cannot afford to settle for a lukewarm yes.
If you're making a pro and con spreadsheet to decide if you should marry someone, the answer is no.
Exactly. You protect your time and your emotional energy until you find the overwhelming, undeniable yes.
Now, I want to introduce some friction here because there is a quote in the Almanack that, taken out of context, sounds unbelievably bleak.
Uh-oh, which one?
Naval says 99% of effort is wasted. I read that and immediately thought, well, what is the point? Why should anyone try to build leverage or apply these mental models if 99% of what we do is garbage?
It is a shocking statement. But we have to dissect what he means by wasted. According to the author, he does not mean the effort is wasted in a developmental or learning sense. Every failure teaches you what not to do.
Okay, that's fair.
But in a purely goal-oriented, outcome-driven sense, it is absolutely true. Think about the mechanics of human life. You might date 24 people before you find the person you marry.
Right. The effort spent on those 24 prior relationships did not result in your ultimate goal of a lifelong partner.
And in high school and college, you wrote hundreds of term papers and took dozens of exams that have absolutely zero bearing on your current professional success.
Most of the job interviews you prep for don't lead to the job you retire from. You're panning for gold, and 99% of what you scoop up is just dirt.
That is the perfect analogy. Naval isn't saying you should stop panning for gold. He is saying you need to be highly vigilant and incredibly self-aware so that the moment you spot the gold, the 1% of effort that actually yields compounding returns, you recognize it.
Once you find the career that utilizes your specific knowledge or the relationship that brings you peace, you abandon the other 99% and push all your chips onto that 1%.
And to be able to identify that 1%, you need a massive, diverse foundation of knowledge. You need pattern recognition.
And Naval argues that the ultimate way to build pattern recognition is through reading. But I was fascinated by his approach because he completely rejects the traditional academic way we're taught to read.
School trains us to treat books as sacred objects. We're taught that if you start a book, you have a moral obligation to finish it, reading every single page in chronological order.
Naval points out that this guilt is exactly why most adults stop reading entirely. They hit chapter 3 of a dense book, they get bored, but because they feel they aren't allowed to start another book until they finish this one, they just stop reading.
It's so true. The book teaches us to treat books like throwaway blog posts. He skims, he skips chapters, he starts in the middle.
If the author is just repeating the same premise to pad the page count, he drops the book without a second thought.
It's about extracting the specific knowledge, not getting a gold star for completion. And he's also very specific about what to read. He avoids modern business books and focuses on foundational texts, microeconomics, evolutionary biology, basic mathematics.
The logic there is unassailable. If you only read advanced, highly theoretical concepts, you're just memorizing someone else's fragile, unproven ideas. You're regurgitating.
But if you deeply understand the absolute foundations, if you truly grasp supply and demand, or the laws of thermodynamics, or the principles of natural selection, you can deduce the complex theories yourself.
A deep understanding of the foundations means you don't have to fear any book in the library because you possess the intellectual source code.
Okay, so let's zoom out. If you master specific knowledge, if you deploy permissionless leverage, if you protect your time with an absurd hourly rate, and you sharpen your judgment through foundational reading.
You will win the wealth game. You will solve your money problems.
Yes, but here is the massive pivot in the Almanack. Naval explicitly warns that solving your money problems only removes the external obstacles to happiness.
Becoming a billionaire will not cure your internal anxiety.
Not at all. The internal work is a completely different, infinitely harder single-player game. This is where we transition into part 3. Understanding happiness is a learned skill.
This is where Naval's philosophy really diverges from mainstream self-help. Most people define happiness as a state of elevated joy.
They think of it as a rush of dopamine, a constant flow of thrills, or forcibly thinking positive thoughts.
Naval completely rejects that. The book argues that happiness is not about positive thoughts, because duality demands that every positive thought holds the seed of a negative thought.
If you declare, "I am so happy today," the unspoken implication is that you were miserable yesterday and you might be miserable tomorrow.
So if it's not joy and it's not positive thinking, how does he define it?
He defines happiness as peace. It is the absence of desire. It is that rare, fleeting state you achieve when you feel that absolutely nothing is missing from your life.
Wow. When nothing is missing, the default mode network of your brain finally powers down.
It stops running into the past to regret your mistakes, and it stops running into the future to anxiously plan your survival. It simply exists, completely absorbed in the present moment.
That definition leads to what I think is the most profound, haunting quote in the entire curation. Naval says, "Desire is a contract you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want."
I want you listening to really sit with the weight of that sentence. Desire is a contract you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want.
We walk through life completely unaware that we are constantly signing these contracts. You see your neighbor's new car and you form a desire for it.
In that exact millisecond, you have fundamentally altered your internal state. You have secretly agreed to be dissatisfied with your current life until that new car is sitting in your driveway.
It perfectly explains the hedonic treadmill. Let's trace the real-life application of this. You want the new car. You sign the contract of unhappiness.
You obsess over it, you work extra hours, and finally you buy it. You drive it off the lot. For exactly 1 week, you are thrilled. You feel the dopamine hit.
But then hedonic adaptation kicks in. The human brain normalizes everything to ensure survival. Suddenly, it's no longer the new amazing car, it's just the metal box that gets you to work.
The thrill vanishes, the peace evaporates, and your brain frantically searches for the next desire to fixate on.
Exactly. The external object did absolutely nothing to fundamentally change your internal baseline of peace. Now, Naval is a pragmatist. He doesn't suggest that we completely eliminate all desire.
Right, because to eliminate all desire would mean giving up ambition entirely and sitting in a cave like an ascetic monk, which isn't practical for humans living in modern society.
His tactical advice is to ruthlessly limit yourself to having only one big desire at a time.
You choose your one area of suffering.
Precisely. Acknowledge that this one massive desire, building your company or finding a spouse, is your chosen area of friction and motivation.
But then, aggressively eliminate all the other petty, trivial desires. Stop caring about upgrading your phone or having the trendiest clothes or dining at the most exclusive restaurants.
By clearing out the petty contracts of unhappiness, you protect your baseline of peace while still pursuing your singular ambition.
This philosophical framework also provides the most effective cure for envy I have ever encountered.
Envy is such a toxic, peace-destroying emotion. It eats away at your internal baseline.
And Naval have a mental model for dismantling jealousy that is just brilliant. He calls it the 100% wholesale swap.
It is a phenomenal cognitive reframe. The illusion of envy is that we think we can cherry-pick reality.
We look at a famous actor or a billionaire tech founder and we think, I wish I had his money, or I wish I had her looks.
The operative word is I. We want to keep our own friends, our own memories, our own underlying personality, but just staple Elon Musk's bank account onto our current life.
Right. It's like looking at a luxury car and wanting to transplant its engine into your beat-up Honda. But Naval points out in the book that reality doesn't work that way.
If you want someone else's money or status, you cannot just extract the good parts. You have to be willing to do a 100% unconditional wholesale swap.
You have to take the money, yes, but you also have to inherit their deep-seated childhood traumas. You have to take their specific physical ailments.
You have to endure their family drama, their paralyzing insecurities, and the exact stress-ravaged neural pathways of their brain. You literally have to cease existing as you and become them in totality.
I always think of it like buying a used car. You see the shiny exterior, but if you buy it, you're also buying the hidden mechanical failures, the rusted transmission, the electrical gremlins that the previous owner hid.
When you frame envy through the lens of a 100% wholesale swap, when you realize you would have to permanently erase your memories, your love for your parents, your specific quirks,
Suddenly you don't want to make the trade. You realize you actually just want to be you, and the jealousy just vanishes.
it's a remarkably effective way to force acceptance of your own life.
And acceptance is a massive recurring theme in the Almanack. The author argues that whenever you are faced with a difficult situation, reality only ever offers you three valid choices.
You can change it, you can accept it, or you can leave it.
Change it, accept it, or leave it. What is critically missing from that list?
Sitting around wishing it would change while doing absolutely nothing. The book points out that this fourth invalid option is the root source of almost all modern misery.
Think about a miserable corporate job. You have the three valid choices. You can improve your skills and demand a promotion. That's changing it.
You can find internal peace with the mundane work and collect your paycheck without emotional investment. That's accepting it.
Or you can quit, leave it. But what do most people do?
They don't quit. They don't try to change it. They don't accept it. They just sit in the break room and complain endlessly.
That cognitive friction, the gap between reality and your unfulfilled desire for things to be different, is where suffering breeds.
To combat that friction, Naval trained a sub-second instinct into his brain to force acceptance. He calls it a positive hack.
Whenever something annoying or frustrating happens, he instantly forces his mind to find the positive angle.
There is a highly relatable example of this in the text. Naval mentions attending an event, and afterwards, someone emailed him a massive folder of 100 uncurated, unedited, mostly terrible photos.
The immediate default ego reaction is annoyance. Why did they dump their organizational work on me? Why couldn't they spend 10 minutes picking the best 3?
But Naval immediately overrides that amygdala hijack. He asks himself, what is the positive here? And the reframe is, I get to use my own aesthetic judgment to pick the absolute best 5 photos that actually flatter me.
When you first hear that, it sounds like cliché toxic positivity advice. Just look on the bright side.
But it goes much deeper than that because it's fundamentally about rewiring neuroplasticity.
Naval didn't just do this once. He trained this response over months and years until it became an involuntary sub-second instinct.
His brain now executes the positive reframe automatically, completely bypassing the chemical release of anger.
It is the deliberate reprogramming of habitual responses. But, and this is the absolute crux of the entire philosophy, achieving this level of mental clarity, overriding your evolutionary programming, and maintaining emotional acceptance is biologically impossible if your physical vessel is broken.
You cannot cultivate internal peace if you are constantly inflamed, exhausted, or in chronic physical pain.
Which brings us to the most uncompromising section of our deep dive today, part 4, saving yourself.
The focus here is on health and self-discipline, and the core lesson is profoundly stark. It is the realization that absolutely no one is coming to save you.
It is the ultimate acceptance of personal accountability. The book states it with brutal clarity. Doctors will not make you healthy. They will only prescribe pills to mask your sickness.
Teachers will not make you smart. They will only give you a syllabus. Gurus will not make you calm. They will only sell you a meditation cushion.
Society can provide tools, but the actual transformation, the grueling daily work, rests entirely on your own shoulders.
Because of that reality, Naval ranks his life priorities in a sequence that might offend some people. He places his physical health at the absolute top, number 1.
Above his happiness, above his billion-dollar companies, and yes, even above his family.
It sounds incredibly selfish at first glance. How can you prioritize the gym over your own children?
But when you unpack the logic, it is unassailable. According to the framework, if you do not fiercely protect your physical health, your capacity to do anything else collapses.
If you are dead or hospitalized or constantly lethargic, you cannot be present for your family.
You cannot deploy the energy needed to build specific knowledge and wealth. You cannot sustain the focus required to cultivate peace.
Health is the bedrock foundational layer. There is a proverb he references. A healthy person wants 10,000 things. A sick person only wants one thing.
So true. And he applies this with militant discipline. The daily morning workout is non-negotiable. He points out that the excuse, "I don't have time," is just a socially acceptable lie.
It is a polite way of saying it is not a priority. If you truly make health your number one priority, you do it first, before the world can intrude.
Naval refuses to start his day, regardless of what crises are exploding at AngelList or his portfolio companies, until his workout is done.
That kind of ruthless, uncompromising prioritization is absolutely necessary because our modern environment is actively, aggressively hostile to our evolutionary biology.
We are operating ancient Pleistocene-era hardware in a hyper-stimulating modern world.
Let's drill down into the diet aspect of this because the Almanack highlights a specific evolutionary trap regarding the combination of fat and sugar.
This completely changed how I look at modern food.
It is a brilliant biological insight. In the natural world of our ancestors, dietary fat and dietary sugar serve very different physiological purposes.
Fat is incredibly calorie-dense, but it drives satiety. It makes you feel full.
If you eat a massive chunk of animal fat, eventually your body will release hormones that make you feel nauseous if you try to eat more. It has a built-in brake pedal.
Dietary sugar, like fructose in berries, does the exact opposite. It drives hunger.
It signals to your ancient lizard brain that you have found a rare, highly valuable resource, and because winter is coming, you need to gorge on it and store it as body fat.
But the critical point is that in nature, fat and sugar are almost never found together in the same food.
Exactly. Breast milk is one of the rare exceptions, and maybe a coconut, but nature keeps them separate.
However, the modern processed food industry discovered that if you artificially combine fat and sugar, think of ice cream, donuts, chocolate bars, pastries, a biological disaster occurs.
The intense hunger signal generated by the sugar completely overrides and short-circuits the satiety signal from the fat.
You can consume thousands of calories of ice cream without your brain ever receiving the chemical signal to stop eating.
It's an evolutionary hijacking, so Naval's advice isn't about counting macros or taking complex biohacking supplements.
It's about subtracting the artificial. Stick to unprocessed foods. Eat closer to how our ancestors ate before the food industry learned how to weaponize our dopamine receptors against us.
But physical health is only half of the foundation. Naval places an equal, if not greater, emphasis on mental hygiene. And his primary tool for this is meditation.
But true to form, he strips away all the mystical, woo-woo religious baggage often associated with it. He simply describes meditation as intermittent fasting for the mind.
I think that is the most accessible definition of meditation ever created.
Just as intermittent fasting gives your digestive system a crucial break from constantly producing insulin and processing food, meditation gives your neural pathways a break from constantly processing stimuli, anxieties, and algorithmic outrage.
Naval experiments with a few methods in the text. One is choiceless awareness, which is essentially walking through the world without actively judging it.
If you see a person on the street, you don't judge their clothes or guess their socioeconomic status. You just accept visual reality exactly as photons hit your retinas.
But the method that Naval speaks about with the most reverence, and the one that sounds the most difficult, is his pursuit of what he calls mental inbox zero.
He advocates sitting in a quiet room, closing your eyes, and doing absolutely fundamentally nothing for an hour a day.
I'm going to push back hard on this. Sitting in a room for an hour doing absolutely nothing with no podcast, no music, no focal point, that sounds like psychological torture for a modern human being.
We are conditioned for constant second-by-second distraction. If I close my eyes in silence, my brain starts torturing me.
It does sound like torture, but the author explains that is exactly why it is necessary.
The suffering you feel in that silence isn't caused by the silence itself. It is caused by your monkey mind frantically experiencing withdrawal symptoms from dopamine and distraction.
According to Naval, when you finally force your brain into silence, all the unresolved issues of your life will suddenly bubble to the surface.
It's like opening an email client you haven't checked in 10 years. The petty arguments, the childhood traumas, the deep-seated fears, the things you said that you regret, they all demand to be processed.
So the goal is to just sit there and let your brain traumatize you with your own memories.
Not traumatize you, but process the backlog. Naval argues that if you just sit there and observe those thoughts without resisting them, without trying to push them away, and without actively engaging and arguing with them, they will eventually run their course and dissolve.
They are processed and archived. If you do this consistently, day after day, month after month, you eventually process the entire backlog.
You reach mental inbox zero. And at that point, you can sit down, close your eyes, and experience pure, unadulterated peace.
The expert analysis here really connects with Naval's experience using cold exposure, specifically the Wim Hof method of taking freezing cold showers. The psychology is identical.
It's a perfect parallel. Naval points out that when you commit to taking a freezing cold shower, the actual physical suffering is not the cold water itself.
The true suffering exists entirely in the anticipation. It's the moment before you turn the handle. It's the tiptoeing in, the hesitation, the internal monologue screaming, "This is going to be terrible. I don't want to do this."
The suffering is the avoidance.
Exactly. Once you finally step fully into the freezing water and accept it, the psychological suffering vanishes completely.
It's just cold. It's a physical sensation that your body is fully equipped to handle.
The same principle applies to the silence of meditation. The suffering is in your mind tiptoeing around its own unresolved trauma.
Stop avoiding it. Step into the freezing water of your own mind. Let the thoughts wash over you, and eventually the water warms up.
That brings us to the final, most expansive section of our deep dive today, Part 5. This is where Naval integrates his theories on wealth, psychology, and biology into a cohesive worldview. He calls it rational Buddhism.
Rational Buddhism is an incredibly pragmatic, almost empirical approach to spirituality.
It is an attempt to reconcile ancient, enduring spiritual truths with the rigorous demands of modern science and evolutionary biology.
He's effectively stress-testing religion.
That's a great way to phrase it. He looks at Eastern philosophy and says, I will keep what works and what I can personally verify.
Meditation works. It lowers cortisol. It increases baseline peace. He can verify that internally and scientifically.
But he completely discards anything that requires blind faith or isn't scientifically falsifiable.
If an ancient text talks about literal past lives or mystical chakras glowing with energy, he sets it aside because it cannot be proven or disproven through the scientific method.
He grounds his spirituality strictly in the physical laws of the universe.
And a central pillar of that grounded spirituality is fully embracing the absolute insignificance of the self.
Now, for a lot of people, the realization that they don't matter is a catalyst for an existential crisis.
But Naval frames it as the ultimate liberation. He uses this poetic imagery, saying that in the grand scheme of the universe, you are nothing but a firefly blinking in the night.
It is a stark, humbling reality check against human hubris.
The universe has existed for roughly 14 billion years, and it will continue to exist for tens of billions of years after we are gone.
Every great work you build, every company you found, every legacy you try to leave will eventually be swallowed by time and turned to dust.
Even human civilization itself will eventually end. If your ego demands that you are the center of the universe, you will live in a constant state of frustration and anxiety because the universe will constantly remind you that you are not in control.
But if you accept the firefly analogy, if you embrace your own fleeting insignificance, then you shed all expectations.
And without expectations, there is no disappointment. You are completely free to just play the game of life on your own terms because no one is keeping score in the long run.
Which naturally leads to the ultimate philosophical question, the one that every thinker eventually has to confront. What is the meaning of life?
The Almanack presents 3 distinct answers from Naval, depending on what level of reality you want to engage with. The first answer is the individualistic one. It's deeply personal.
You have to find it yourself. Any meaning handed to you on a silver platter by a guru, a priest, or your parents is inherently fragile because it isn't yours.
You have to construct your own meaning through trial and error. The second answer is the bleak, nihilistic one. There is no meaning.
You were dead for 14 billion years before you were born. You will be dead for billions of years after. And this brief flash of consciousness is just a random biological accident. It's a blank slate.
But the third answer is the one that completely blew my mind. It perfectly showcases Naval's unique ability to blend hard science with philosophy. It is the physics answer.
And it revolves entirely around the concept of entropy. Let's really unpack the physics of meaning here.
To understand this, we have to look at the second law of thermodynamics. It states that the universe is constantly moving from a state of order to a state of higher entropy, which means disorder or chaos.
Think of a sandcastle on a beach. The natural order of the universe, the wind, the waves, wants to flatten that sandcastle back into a random assortment of grains on the beach.
It takes a living system, a human expending calories and energy to build the sandcastle against the forces of entropy.
Ultimately, the entire universe is heading toward a state called heat death, where all energy is evenly distributed, no more work can be done, and nothing ever happens again.
Okay, so the universe demands chaos and eventual death. Where do humans fit into that?
Naval hypothesizes that the fundamental purpose of living systems, plants, animals, and especially humans, is to locally reverse entropy.
We are the weird creatures that take raw, chaotic materials from the earth and force them into highly ordered states.
We build complex symphonies out of sound waves, we build skyscrapers out of iron and glass, we build structured families out of biological urges.
We create bubbles of intense order in a chaotic universe. But the twist is what that local order costs.
Exactly. In the process of locally reversing entropy to build our civilizations, we must expend massive amounts of energy.
And by expending that energy, we are actually globally accelerating the universe toward its ultimate heat death.
We are the grand engines of the universe, pushing it toward its final unified state of rest.
That is incredibly profound. We are the universe's mechanism for burning itself out beautifully. But while we are here, locally reversing entropy, we have to exist alongside other humans.
And Naval believes that the only way to do that successfully over a long period is by adhering to strict core values. He makes the fascinating argument that honesty is actually the ultimate selfish value.
Society usually frames honesty as an altruistic moral duty. We are taught to tell the truth to be good people.
But Naval approaches it from the perspective of cognitive load theory. He says honesty is selfish in the best way possible. Think about the mechanics of lying.
If you tell a lie, or if you constantly act as a chameleon, telling different people what they want to hear to gain status, you fracture your mind.
You now have to keep track of multiple competing realities in your head. You have to remember who you lied to, what specific details you fabricated, and how to maintain the facade.
It requires immense processing power, which destroys your internal baseline of peace.
Yes, it creates massive mental clutter. Being radically honest clears your mind. You only ever have to remember one reality, the objective truth. It is the most efficient way to navigate the world.
And he pairs that radical honesty with his final rule for navigating society. Only play long-term games with long-term people.
Because, as we established way back in the wealth section, all significant returns in life, whether it's financial wealth, deep emotional relationships, or profound specific knowledge, come from compound interest.
You cannot compound a relationship with someone who is fundamentally dishonest, or someone who views life as a short-term, zero-sum game of status.
You have to identify the rare people whose core values align with yours, and then you invest deeply and exclusively in those relationships for decades.
Okay, we have covered a massive, sprawling landscape today from Eric Jorgenson's compilation of Naval Ravikant's worldview.
We have traced the journey from the raw mechanics of acquiring capital, to the neurobiology of desire, all the way to the thermodynamics of the universe's eventual heat death. Let's synthesize the absolute core takeaways.
If we distill this vast framework down to its essence, the journey looks like this. Wealth is not a lottery. It is a highly specific skill.
It is built by identifying your authentic, uncopyable specific knowledge and weaponizing it with permissionless leverage like code or media so that your financial upside is completely untethered from your physical time.
Happiness is not a permanent euphoric state of joy. It is a deliberate choice rooted in cultivating baseline peace and recognizing that every desire is a self-imposed contract for suffering.
And health is the uncompromising, absolute physical foundation that makes the pursuit of wealth, peace, and meaning biologically possible.
It is incredibly rare to find a philosophy that bridges the brutal reality of capitalism with the deep stillness of Eastern thought. Naval provides a compass that actually functions in the messy, muddy water of modern life.
He equips you with the mental models to be the active architect of your own reality, rather than a passive victim of circumstance.
And I want to leave you, the listener, with one final provocative thought to mull over. We spent a lot of time discussing the physics answer to the meaning of life.
The concept that all human striving, all our art, our technology, our heartbreak, and our triumphs are ultimately just accelerating the universe toward an inevitable unified heat death.
If that is true, if the final destination of everything is a quiet cosmic rest, then I want you to realize the immense freedom hidden in that truth. Absolutely nothing you do is a permanent mistake.
No failure will echo into eternity. No embarrassment actually matters. It is the ultimate cosmic permission slip.
Exactly. You are completely, utterly free. You are free to write your own rules. You are free to aggressively build what you genuinely love. And you are free to find your own profound peace. The only question left to answer is, how will you use your Firefly blink of a life?
A brilliant question to leave them with.
If you enjoyed this audiobook summary and found it valuable, don't forget to subscribe to Readlist for more powerful book summaries and life-changing ideas.
Your support helps us continue bringing the world's best books to you in a simple and easy-to-understand format.
Subscribe to Readlist and continue your journey of learning and self-improvement. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next audiobook summary.